need a home and I need a mommy.
You need a home, and I need a mommy, Sophie said, looking up at the stranger at the bus stop with those impossibly honest 6-year-old eyes. The woman froze, her phone halfway to her ear. Joshua's face went white. His daughter just told a complete stranger they were homeless, in front of everyone, at a busy Chicago bus stop, and the woman Sophie chose. She was about to change their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. But before we find out what happens next, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment telling us where you're listening from right now. Now let me tell you how Joshua Morgan ended up at that bus stop, holding his daughter's hand while she shattered what was left of his pride. 5 years earlier, Joshua had everything. He stood in the Chicago architecture firm's glass-walled office on the 42nd floor, reviewing blueprints for a new community center with his team, his wedding ring catching the morning light. At 33, he'd made senior architect 2 years ahead of schedule. The sustainable housing project he'd designed had just won a national award. His wife Rebecca was pregnant with their second child. Life was a carefully drafted plan, and every line was perfect. "Josh, you seeing this?" His colleague Marcus pointed at the computer screen. "Your Riverside Commons project just got featured in Architecture Digest." Joshua grinned, pulling out his phone to text Rebecca. She responded immediately with 3 heart emojis and, "Your daughter will be so proud when she's old enough to understand what her daddy does." Their daughter Sophie was 1 year old, with Rebecca's blonde hair starting to curl and Joshua's blue-grey eyes that seemed to take in everything. They'd bought the Lincoln Park townhouse 2 years before, stretched their budget to the limit, but it was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, walking distance to good schools. Rebecca had painted the nursery yellow herself while 7 months pregnant, Joshua nervously hovering with the ladder. The years between Sophie's birth and now had been a montage of sleepless nights and first steps, first words and scraped knees. Joshua made partner at the firm when Sophie was 3. Rebecca went back to work as a graphic designer when Sophie started preschool. They fell into a rhythm, morning chaos of getting a toddler dressed, evenings of bath time and stories, weekends at the zoo or the beach. Sophie turned 4. Then 5. She started kindergarten wearing a purple backpack almost as big as she was, waving goodbye without a single tear, while Rebecca cried in the car. She made friends instantly, fearless even then, walking up to kids on the playground and announcing, "I'm Sophie and we're going to be friends now." By 6, she'd lost her 2 front teeth within a week of each other, creating a gap that made her lisp slightly when she spoke. She was in 1st grade, reading above her level, asking impossible questions about why the sky was blue and where babies came from and whether ants had feelings. Rebecca's pregnancy with the second baby had been textbook perfect for the first 6 months. She'd gone to monthly appointments where the doctor confirmed everything was progressing beautifully. Joshua had gone to one appointment with her, watching the ultrasound screen with tears in his eyes as they saw their daughter's tiny fist. "There's your baby girl," the ultrasound technician said, moving the wand across Rebecca's belly. "Everything looks perfect. Perfect measurements, perfect heartbeat, no concerns at all." Rebecca had squeezed Joshua's hand. "Let's tell Sophie we're having a sister." They'd sat Sophie down that evening at the kitchen table, and she'd been absolutely thrilled. She'd wanted a sister desperately, had already named the baby Emma without waiting for their input. She'd started talking about all the things she'd teach Emma, how to build block towers, how to sing, how to read. At Rebecca's 7th month appointment, she'd gone alone while Joshua worked. She called him that afternoon with news that made him leave the office early. "The baby's bigger than expected for how far along I am," Rebecca said, her voice tight with worry. "Dr. Hartley wants me to come back in 2 weeks for another ultrasound. He's probably being extra careful, but it scared me. Joshua had driven home, found Rebecca in the nursery that she'd painted soft yellow. She was sitting in the rocking chair, one hand on her belly. "Everything's fine," he assured her, but worry had started to creep in. Dr. Hartley is one of the best. If he wanted to monitor more carefully, that's just him being thorough. But the next 2 weeks were tense. Rebecca had started eating less, complaining about feeling dizzy. Joshua had brought her iron supplements, made sure she was drinking enough water. She'd gone to the follow-up ultrasound, and when she returned home, she seemed unsettled. "The baby's growing very fast," she reported. "Dr. Hartley said he wants me to come in weekly now instead of monthly for monitoring. He mentioned something about polyhydramnios, too much amniotic fluid, but he said as long as we monitor, everything should be fine." Joshua had looked up the condition online at work and tried not to panic. The forums had been full of worst-case scenarios. He'd called Rebecca that afternoon just to hear her voice. "I'm scared," she'd admitted. "What if something's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Joshua had said with more confidence than he felt. "Emma's just going to be a big, healthy girl. Remember when Sophie was measuring big too? She turned out perfect." But deep down, he knew something felt different this time. The doctor visits became more frequent. Joshua went to the next one, sitting in the waiting room flipping through parenting magazines he couldn't focus on. When Rebecca came out, her face was pale. "He wants me to think about early delivery," she said quietly. "Around 36 weeks if the fluid keeps accumulating. He doesn't want to wait until term." Joshua's stomach had dropped. How early? 4 weeks, maybe less. They'd driven home in silence, Rebecca staring out the window, Joshua's hands tight on the steering wheel. That night, he'd held her while she cried, scared for the baby, scared of an early delivery, scared of the unknown. At 8 months pregnant, Rebecca had started preparing the nursery in earnest. She'd bought tiny white clothes and a mobile with gentle music. She'd set up the crib herself when Joshua wasn't home, insisting she needed to feel like she was doing something productive. She'd spent hours organizing Sophie's old baby items, the clothes that Emma would wear, the toys Emma would play with. "Do you think she'll look like you or me?" Rebecca asked one evening, sitting in that yellow nursery while Sophie played at her feet with dolls. "She'll look like you," Joshua said, kissing her hair, "and she'll be beautiful like you." "I just want her to be healthy," Rebecca whispered. "That's all I want." Joshua had tightened his hold on her. He wanted that too, more than anything. At 8 months and 3 weeks, Rebecca went for what would be her final appointment. Joshua was working on the community center project, reviewing structural calculations, when his phone rang. It was Rebecca's mother. "Sweetheart, Rebecca's in the hospital. There's been an emergency. You need to come now." Joshua's world had stopped. The drive to the hospital was a blur. He'd broken several speed limits, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Rebecca's mother met him at the emergency room entrance, her face white. "They're taking her into surgery. Placental abruption. They said she started bleeding. They're trying to save the baby." Joshua had stood in the waiting room feeling like the floor was collapsing beneath him. His wife, his unborn daughter, and he could do nothing but wait. The surgery took 4 hours. When the doctor finally came out, his expression told the story before his words did. "We were able to deliver Emma. She's in the NICU and she's fighting. She's very small, being so premature, but she has a strong heartbeat and good lung function for her age. We're cautiously optimistic." "And Rebecca?" Joshua's voice didn't sound like his own. The doctor's face fell. "Mr. Morgan, your wife lost a lot of blood. Despite all our efforts, we couldn't stop the bleeding in time. I'm so very sorry. Your wife passed away at 3:47 p.m. The words hadn't made sense. His brain couldn't process them. Rebecca couldn't be dead. He'd kissed her goodbye that morning. He'd told her he'd see her at home. He'd been planning to surprise her with dinner from that Italian place she loved. "I want to see her," he'd heard himself say. "I want to see my wife." They'd taken him to where Rebecca lay, and he'd collapsed beside her. His wife, his love, gone. The next few hours were a nightmare. He had to call Rebecca's mother back, had to tell her that her daughter was dead, had to go down to the NICU and see his newborn daughter through layers of plastic and tubes, fighting for her life. Emma was impossibly tiny, 2 pounds, 3 ounces. The nurses had explained that at 32 weeks her lungs weren't fully developed, but they were hopeful. She was a fighter, one of the nurses said. Feisty, just like her father. Joshua had stood there looking at his newborn child, a daughter who would grow up without her mother, and broken completely. Someone had to tell Sophie. Rebecca's mother had wanted to do it, but Joshua had insisted. Sophie deserved to hear it from him, even though he had no idea what words existed for this situation. He'd gone home that night, exhausted and hollow. Sophie was sleeping, her small hand clutching her stuffed rabbit. He'd sat on the edge of her bed and watched her sleep, wondering how he was going to survive what came next. The next morning, he'd sat Sophie down in the kitchen. She'd looked at him with those bright eyes, sensing something was wrong. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something sad. Something very sad." Sophie's face had crumpled before he even said the words. "It's Mommy. Mommy got very sick yesterday, and the doctors tried very hard to help her, but they couldn't. Mommy died." Sophie had screamed. She'd cried so hard her whole body shook. Joshua had held her, and they'd both wept. And baby Emma was in the NICU, and Rebecca was in the morgue. And Joshua's entire life had collapsed in 24 hours. The NICU visits became Joshua's life. Every day he'd drop Sophie with Rebecca's mother, and he'd drive to the hospital. He'd sit beside Emma's incubator, talking to his daughter, telling her about her mother, even though Emma was only hours old. "Your mommy was the most beautiful woman," he'd whisper through the incubator walls. "She had blonde hair like you're going to have probably, and she was so smart and so funny. She would sing to you at night after you were born. She picked your name, Emma, her grandmother's name." Emma had fought. She'd struggled with breathing at first, then gradually needed less oxygen support. The doctors had explained about feeding tubes and bilirubin levels and all the things that premature babies had to overcome. But gradually, miraculously, Emma got stronger. After 6 weeks, Emma came home. She was still small, still needed careful monitoring, but she was home. Joshua had stood in the doorway of the yellow nursery, Rebecca's nursery, holding his newborn daughter and thinking about his wife. He'd set up a crib right next to their bed so he could monitor Emma's breathing during the night. He'd become obsessed with her vital signs, her feeding schedule, her development. He'd called the pediatrician constantly with questions and concerns. Rebecca's mother had helped. She'd come stay with them, taking care of Sophie during the day while Joshua worked. But it was an exhausting, overwhelming situation. A new baby, a 6-year-old who'd lost her mother, mounting medical debt, and Joshua barely holding it together. The medical bills had started arriving like a tsunami. The emergency surgery, the emergency room visit, the NICU stay for 6 weeks, $10,000 a day, the neonatal specialists who'd consulted on Emma's care, the medications, the follow-up appointments. Joshua had opened the first bill and felt his stomach drop. $50,000 for the emergency care. That was just the beginning. Rebecca's health insurance had lapsed during a job transition. She'd been between positions, and it was a gap no one had thought to close urgently. The insurance company had denied coverage, citing the lapsed policy. Joshua would be responsible for everything. $100,000. That had become $200,000. The debt had spiraled faster than he could process. He'd refinanced the townhouse, taken out a loan against his 401k, worked 70-hour weeks while Sophie stayed with Rebecca's mother, while baby Emma's needs consumed every moment, not at work. For 6 weeks, Emma's survival had been uncertain. Every day could be her last. Every monitor alarm had sent Joshua's heart into his throat. The hospital bills had climbed toward $200,000, and he'd sat in the NICU waiting room at 3 a.m, wondering if this was his life now. Bankruptcy, loss, and the constant fear that his surviving child would slip away too. The nurses had been kind. There was one older nurse, Patricia, who'd noticed Joshua's desperation. "You need to talk to our social worker," she'd told him gently. "There are programs for families in your situation. You don't have to carry this alone." But Joshua's pride had been too big then. He'd refused the social worker's office, convinced he could figure this out himself. He'd work harder, make more money, fix this. Then Emma came home. Tiny but healthy, a miracle baby who'd survived against odds. Joshua should have felt joy, should have felt relief. Instead, he felt the suffocating weight of debt and grief and responsibility crushing him from all sides. He couldn't focus at work, missed deadlines, made errors in calculations that his colleagues caught before they became serious. His concentration was fractured. He'd go to architectural meetings and zone out, thinking about Emma's doctor appointments or Sophie's nightmares or the stack of medical bills on his kitchen counter. His boss called him in 8 months after Rebecca's death. Joshua had walked into the conference room expecting a normal project update. Instead, he found his boss sitting alone at the table, a folder of Joshua's work in front of him. "Josh, we understand what you're going through. We really do. But I need to be honest with you. Your performance has declined significantly over the last 8 months. Joshua's stomach had started to turn. The Peterson Project. Those structural errors could have been catastrophic if they'd made it to construction, and you've missed 3 major deadlines this month alone. The community center project is behind because of errors in your calculations. I'll fix them. I can fix them, Joshua had heard himself say. I don't think you can right now, and I don't blame you. But we have responsibilities to our clients and to the firm. I'm going to have to let you go. I'm so sorry. The words had echoed like they were coming from underwater. How long? Joshua had asked, his voice hollow. 2 weeks' notice. We'll give you a severance package, 2 months' salary. And I'll write you a good reference, okay? You're a talented architect, Josh. This isn't about your abilities. It's just, right now, you can't be here. Joshua had packed his desk in a daze, senior architect to unemployed in 10 minutes. He'd packed the photos of Rebecca and Sophie and Emma into a cardboard box. He'd unplugged his computer setup. He'd walked out of that glass office on the 42nd floor and never looked back. He had 6 months of mortgage payments in savings, maybe, if he was careful. 2 daughters depending on him. Medical debt that made his chest tight every time he thought about it. He'd applied for every architecture position in Chicago. The responses had been brutal and consistent. Overqualified. We're looking for someone with more recent experience. His resume showed an 8-month gap with decreasing performance before termination. Nobody called back. Then the job market seemed to evaporate. The recession hit harder. The interviews dried up. He'd applied for every drafting job, any position that used AutoCAD, entry-level work. Nothing. The savings ran out faster than expected. Medical bills from Emma's ongoing care, mortgage payments, the cost of childcare for Sophie, food, utilities. It was an impossible math equation where the expenses always outnumbered the income. He'd sold the townhouse in a short sale, watched years of equity disappear, walked away with nothing, destroyed his credit, and moved with both girls into a small apartment in a cheaper neighborhood. Rebecca's mother watched the girls during the day while he drove for Uber, delivered food, took any gig work he could find. It was 12-hour days for $40. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. The apartment manager had started leaving notices. First, a friendly reminder, then a formal warning, then a final notice. Joshua had sat in that small apartment, holding his daughters, and realized he'd run out of time, run out of options, run out of pride. The eviction notice came after he missed 2 months of rent, 30 days. That's all the court gave him. Joshua had looked at his daughters, Sophie now understanding enough to be scared, constantly asking when Daddy's job would start, when they could go back to the nice house. Baby Emma just learning to crawl, exploring the small apartment with wonder, unaware that her world was about to collapse again. He'd made the decision that broke something inside him. He'd packed what they could fit in his 12-year-old Honda Civic. Everything else went to Goodwill or the curb, the furniture, the toys, the life they'd built. Their first night in the car was in a Walmart parking lot. Emma had cried inconsolably, her diarrhea making the car smell, her diaper bag forgotten in the apartment. Sophie had pressed her face against the window, watching other families walk past with groceries, wondering if they'd done something wrong, if this was some kind of punishment. "When are we going home?" Sophie had asked, her voice tiny. "Soon, baby. We're going home soon." That had been 4 months ago. Now Joshua knew the rotation of parking lots where security wouldn't bother them. Walmart on Monday nights, Target on Wednesday. The 24-hour fitness center parking lot on Thursday, cheaper than a hotel, and he got gym access included. He knew which gyms had the cheapest memberships for shower access. Planet Fitness, 24-hour membership, $30 a month. He'd shower at 5 in the morning before work, washing his clothes in the sink, trying to maintain some dignity. He knew which libraries opened earliest, so Sophie could stay warm while he drove Emma to the subsidized daycare that cost half his daily Uber earnings. The main library opened at 7 a.m. Sophie would do her homework at a corner table, talking to the kind librarian who'd started saving books for her. He knew that his daughter wore the same 3 outfits on rotation. The teachers had started to notice. One had quietly asked if everything was okay at home, if Sophie needed any extra support. Joshua had lied and said everything was fine. Sophie's shoes had holes in the toes. Her socks had mismatched pairs because he could only wash what he had in the gym locker room. She'd stopped inviting kids to play because she couldn't invite them to her house. He'd applied for 73 jobs in the last 4 months. 73 rejections. Some didn't even bother responding. Sophie never complained. Not once. She'd helped pack their things in the car every morning. Such a small, devastating helper. She'd spoken in whispers when Emma was sleeping, careful not to disturb her sister. She'd done her homework in the library, sitting at a computer table, working on math worksheets with a pencil that had been sharpened down to half its original size. When classmates asked about her address, she'd told them they lived in different places. At 6 years old, she'd learned to protect her father's pride. It was a skill a child should never have to learn. On the afternoon of the bus stop moment, Joshua had just left another failed interview. This one was for an assistant drafting position paying $17 an hour, a third of what he used to make. The interviewer had looked at his resume, looked at him, and said those fatal words, "You're overqualified for this position. I think you'd get bored and leave." Joshua wanted to scream. He wanted to say, "I'll be grateful. I'll work hard. Please, I have 2 daughters." But he knew desperation didn't sell well, so he'd smiled professionally, thanked them, and left. He'd picked up Sophie from school. She'd looked exhausted, her backpack almost as big as she was. They'd walked to the bus stop to save gas money. Emma was at daycare for another hour, the only hour of the day when Joshua had a moment to breathe. "Daddy, my feet hurt," Sophie said quietly, looking down at her two small shoes that she'd outgrown 3 months ago, but they couldn't afford to replace. "I know, sweetheart. Just a little longer." They'd sat on the bench to wait for the bus. A young woman stood nearby, checking her phone, backpack slung over one shoulder. She wore faded jeans and a cream-colored sweater that had seen better days, comfortable worn flats. She looked like every other 20-something in Chicago, probably on her way home from a coffee shop job or college classes. Sophie had stared at her with that intense 6-year-old focus that usually preceded an inappropriate question or comment. "Sophie, don't stare," Joshua murmured, knowing that look. But Sophie was already standing up, walking right up to the woman with the fearless confidence of a child who didn't understand social boundaries or the concept of strangers. "Excuse me," Sophie said, looking up. "Are you married?" The woman looked up from her phone, surprised. No? Do you have kids?" "Sophie." Joshua stood, face flushing hot with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, she doesn't have a filter. Excuse us, do you have a house?" The woman's surprise was shifting to curiosity. She knelt down slightly to be closer to Sophie's height. "Yes, I do. A nice one." Sophie nodded, processing this information with the solemn seriousness of someone making a very important decision. The elderly man at the bus stop had turned to stare at them. A young couple whispered to each other, looking at Joshua with a mix of pity and judgment. Then Sophie said the words that made Joshua want to disappear into the pavement. "You need a home and I need a mommy. My daddy needs a home too. Maybe we could help each other." The silence that followed felt like hours. The woman's green eyes went wide. An elderly man at the bus stop turned away, uncomfortable with the rawness of it. The young couple actually took a step back. Joshua's face burned with humiliation so intense the world seemed to tilt. "Sophie, we don't—" He grabbed his daughter's hand, pulling her back. "I'm so sorry, Mom. She doesn't understand. We're fine. We're not—" "We live in the car," Sophie continued, oblivious to her father's mortification. Her lisp made car sound like car. "Daddy says it's an adventure, but I know it's because we don't have money. You look nice and you smell good. Do you like kids?" Joshua wanted to cry, or disappear, or both. This stranger now knew his most shameful secret, announced to a busy bus stop by his 6-year-old daughter. Every eye was on them. The teenage girl at the bus stop was recording on her phone. Oh God, was she recording? He tugged Sophie back, unable to meet the woman's eyes. "I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. Sophie, we're walking home." "But you said it's too far." "We're walking." He turned, pulling Sophie away, dying inside. Behind him, the woman's voice called out, "Wait!" Joshua stopped, but didn't turn around. He couldn't bear to see pity in her eyes, or worse, contempt. "Please wait." Footsteps approached. "I'm Olivia, and I'd like to talk to you, both of you." Joshua finally turned. The woman, Olivia, was looking at Sophie with something that wasn't pity. It was softer than that. Sadder. "You don't have to be embarrassed," Olivia said quietly, meeting his eyes. "I think your daughter might be the bravest person I've met in a long time." Sophie's face lit up like someone had turned on a light inside her. Joshua didn't know what to say. This stranger was standing too close, looking at him with too much understanding, and he couldn't fall apart here. Not at a bus stop, not in front of Sophie. He was barely holding it together as it was. "Look," Olivia said, "I know this is weird, and I'm probably going to sound crazy, but can I buy you both coffee or hot chocolate?" She looked at Sophie. "Do you like hot chocolate?" "Yes." Sophie's hand squeezed Joshua's. "Can we, Daddy? Please, can we have hot chocolate?" Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to protect what little dignity he had left. to grab Sophie and walk away and pretend this hadn't happened. But Sophie was looking up at him with hope in her eyes, genuine hope, and he hadn't been able to give her hope in so long. 4 months of scrambling and struggling and hiding, and she was looking at him like this small kindness might actually be possible. "Okay," he heard himself say. His voice sounded rough. "Coffee that would be nice. Thank you." Olivia smiled. And Joshua noticed for the first time that she was beautiful, not in an obvious way, but in the kind of way that snuck up on you. Light blonde hair, green eyes, a scattering of freckles across her nose. She couldn't be more than 30. What was she doing, offering coffee to a homeless man and his daughter? They walked to a small cafe 2 blocks away, a cozy place with mismatched furniture and the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods. Joshua's stomach clenched with hunger, but he pushed the feeling down. This wasn't about him. Olivia ordered hot chocolate with extra whipped cream for Sophie, black coffee for Joshua, and a latte for herself. Sophie climbed into the window booth, chattering away to Olivia about school and her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, and her baby sister, Emma. "You have another daughter?" Olivia asked, genuine interest in her voice, like Sophie's words actually mattered. "She's 2, Sophie said proudly. "She's at daycare. Daddy picks her up at 5. She's learning to talk. She says dada and no mostly. She's funny. She must be adorable if she looks anything like you." Sophie giggled, and Joshua felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time he'd heard his daughter laugh like that? Joshua sat stiffly across from Olivia, his coffee cooling untouched in his hands. He should say something, explain, apologize again for Sophie's directness, but his throat felt tight. "I'm sorry about—" "Don't," Olivia interrupted gently. "Please don't apologize again. Your daughter just did the bravest thing I've seen in years. Most adults wouldn't have that kind of courage. She doesn't understand that she was—" Joshua stopped. He couldn't say begging in front of Sophie, even though that's what it had been. "Being honest?" Olivia finished. "Asking for help? Those aren't things to be ashamed of, Joshua." She'd learned his name from Sophie's chatter. That simple fact, that she'd been listening, paying attention, made his eyes sting. "Easy to say when you're not the one living in a car," Joshua said quietly. The bitterness in his voice surprised him. "Easy to be optimistic about honesty when you have hot chocolate money." Olivia didn't flinch at his tone. "You're right. I don't know what that's like," she said honestly. "I grew up comfortable. My parents gave me everything. I had safety and security that a lot of people don't. And yes, I can afford hot chocolate. I can afford more than that." She wrapped her hands around her latte. "But I'd like to help, if you'll let me." Joshua's defenses went up immediately. "We're not charity cases." "I didn't say you were." Olivia's voice stayed gentle but firm. "I run a small non-profit that helps families in transition. Housing assistance, job placement, that kind of thing. It's not charity. It's support while people get back on their feet. It's recognizing that good people can hit bad circumstances, and sometimes all it takes is a hand up to change everything." Joshua wanted to believe her, desperately. The thought of a bed, of Sophie having somewhere safe to sleep, of Emma not crying in the car. It was almost too much to hope for. But he'd learned not to trust easy solutions. Life had taught him that lesson well. "What's the catch?" he asked, his voice hard. "No catch. Just paperwork and a willingness to accept help," Olivia said simply. "I'm not going to ask you for anything you can't give. I just want to help." Sophie was watching them both, her hot chocolate forgotten, sensing that something important was happening. "What kind of help?" Joshua heard himself ask. "Temporary housing while you look for work. Job placement assistance. What's your background?" "Architecture. I was a senior architect before." He gestured vaguely, not wanting to say, before my wife died and I lost everything and got fired and lost my house in front of Sophie. But Olivia was watching him with understanding in her eyes, like she could see the edges of that story. I might know someone looking for architectural help, Olivia said. It's not senior level, but it's a start, a real start, an actual job. Joshua's throat tightened. He didn't trust this, couldn't trust it. Strangers didn't just fix your life over coffee because your daughter asked nicely. That wasn't how the world worked. He'd learned that lesson too. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice rough. "What do you actually want? Because people don't just help." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. She stared into her coffee like the answer was written in the foam. When she spoke, there was something in her voice Joshua couldn't identify. Old pain, maybe. Something deeper. "Let's just say I know what it's like to need help and not know how to ask for it," she said carefully. "Your daughter had the courage to ask. The least I can do is answer. The least I should do." There was more to that story, Joshua could tell, but he didn't push. Sophie reached across the table and took Olivia's hand. "I like you. You can be my mommy." "Sophie!" Joshua pulled her back, his face flushing again. "I'm so sorry. She doesn't know—" But Olivia was laughing. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. "How about we start with friends?" Olivia said to Sophie, her eyes crinkling. "Being a mommy is a really big job, but I'd love to be your friend. Your very good friend." "Okay." Sophie swung her legs under the table, happy now. Everything solved in her 6-year-old mind. If only it were that simple. But as Joshua watched Olivia smile at his daughter, watched her listen intently as Sophie chattered about school and Emma and architecture lessons her dad had given her, something loosened in his chest. Hope. Fragile and terrifying, but hope. "What do I need to do?" he asked quietly. Olivia pulled out her phone. "Give me your number. I'll text you the address of the housing coordinator. She'll set you up with a temporary apartment. Clean, safe, fully furnished. Move-in ready. I can't afford. It's covered by the program for the first 3 months. By then, you should have income from the job I'm going to help you find," Olivia said firmly. "After 3 months, you transition to income-based rent. It's designed so people like you can rebuild. Can you do that?" Joshua nodded, not trusting his voice. "Good. It's not charity," Olivia said again. "It's investment. Investment in your family's future. Investment in getting you back on your feet so you can help the next person who's struggling." Joshua gave Olivia his number. His hands shook as he typed it into her phone. She typed quickly, then hit send. His phone buzzed immediately. "Address is there. Tell Maria I sent you. She's amazing. She's been coordinating these placements for 5 years. She'll get you set up tonight. Tonight, Joshua. Your daughters will sleep in real beds." Tonight. He let the word sink in. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. "Tonight is good," he said roughly. "Thank you. I can't thank you enough." Olivia smiled. "Yes, you can. You're going to rebuild your life. You're going to get back on your feet. And then maybe, someday, you'll help someone else the way I'm helping you. That's the only thanks I need." They left the cafe an hour later, Sophie holding both Joshua's hand and Olivia's. The sun was starting to set, painting the Chicago sky in shades of orange and pink. At the corner where they had to part ways, Olivia knelt down to Sophie's level. "I'll see you soon, okay? Be good for your dad." "Will you come visit our new house?" Sophie asked, her eyes bright with hope. Olivia glanced at Joshua. "If your dad says it's okay." Joshua should say no, should keep boundaries, should protect himself and his daughters from getting attached to another person who might disappear. But Sophie was looking at him with so much hope, and he was so tired of saying no to his daughter. "Yeah," he said, "that would be okay." Olivia stood, met his eyes. "You're going to be okay, Joshua. I promise." She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the evening crowd. Sophie tugged his hand. "Daddy, is she magic?" Joshua watched Olivia's blonde hair vanish around a corner. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she is." They picked up Emma from daycare and drove to the address Olivia had sent. The building was in a decent neighborhood, not wealthy, but safe, clean, well-maintained. Maria met them in the lobby, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who didn't bat an eye at their situation. "Olivia called ahead," Maria said, leading them upstairs in the elevator. "She vouches for you, which is good enough for me. I've seen her change a lot of lives. Yours is going to be one of them." The apartment was small, but perfect. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen with a stove and refrigerator that worked, a living room with actual furniture. Sophie ran from room to room, squealing with delight. Emma toddled after her sister on unsteady 2-year-old legs, touching the walls like she couldn't believe they were real. "The program covers rent and utilities for 3 months, Maria explained, handing Joshua a folder of paperwork. "After that, you'll transition to income-based rent. Olivia said she has a job lead for you, Derek Chen. He's a good guy, smart. He cares about his employees." Joshua nodded, still not quite believing this was happening. "Good. You'll start getting back on your feet. Most families transition out successfully within 6 months, some faster. We have a support network, counseling, job placement help, childcare assistance. It's all there. You just have to use it." Maria handed him keys. "Welcome home, Mr. Morgan." "Welcome home." Joshua stood in the small living room after Maria left, listening to his daughters laugh in their new bedrooms, and broke down. 4 months of holding it together, of being strong, of pretending this was all an adventure, it came pouring out. He sat on the floor and cried harder than he'd cried since Rebecca died. They had a home. For 3 months at least, they had a home. That night, Sophie slept in an actual bed for the first time in months. Joshua tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and she was asleep in seconds. "Daddy, I like Olivia." "She's nice," Sophie murmured as he was leaving. "She is nice. Do you think she'll really visit?" Joshua didn't know. He barely knew anything about Olivia except that she'd given them a second chance when he had nothing left to give. "I hope so, sweetheart. Now sleep." He checked on Emma in the crib Maria had provided, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, and collapsed on the couch, a real couch, not a car seat, and pulled out his phone. He should text Olivia, thank her. "But what did you say to someone who just changed your entire life over hot chocolate?" He typed, "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough. Sophie's asleep in a real bed. Emma's breathing easy in a real crib. I think I might actually believe this is real." Her response came quickly. "You just did. Get some sleep, Joshua. Tomorrow's a new start." He stared at her words. Tomorrow's a new start. When was the last time he'd believed in new starts? But lying in a real apartment, his daughters safe in real beds, he let himself believe. The next morning, Joshua woke on the couch, disoriented for a moment. Then he heard Sophie and Emma talking in the other room, and he remembered. Home. They had a home. Olivia texted him an address and a name. Derek Chen, owner of a small architecture firm specializing in sustainable design. His heart rate picked up. "He's expecting your call," her text said. "Mention my name. Tell him about your Riverside Commons project. He'll remember seeing it in Architecture Digest." Joshua called, his hands shaking. Within an hour, he had an interview scheduled for that afternoon. 3 hours away. He could do this. He had to do this. "I'll watch the girls," Maria offered when he mentioned it. I'm downstairs in the community coordinator office. Go knock 'em dead." The interview went better than any in the last year. Derek Chen was young, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an easy manner. They talked about sustainable architecture, about green design, about materials that could actually make a difference. "I saw your Riverside Commons project," Derek said, pulling up images on his computer. "Community center that actually serves the community. That's rare. Most architects design for aesthetics. You designed for purpose." Joshua's throat tightened. It felt good to be seen. "I can't offer senior architect pay yet," Derek admitted. "We're a small firm, only 5 of us, but I can offer $45,000 a year and room to grow. After a year, if you're working out, and I think you will, we can talk about more." 45,000 was less than half what Joshua used to make. It was also more than he'd earned in the last 6 months combined. It was enough. With the housing assistance, it was actually enough. "When can I start?" Derek grinned. "How about Monday?" Joshua walked out of the office in a daze. He had a job, a real job, in his field, with a real future. He called Olivia immediately. "I got it. I got the job." He could hear her smile through the phone. "I knew you would. Derek's a good guy. He recognizes talent. You'll do well there. I don't know how to thank you. Have dinner with me." The words came quickly, like she'd surprised herself. "I mean, you and the girls. Tomorrow night. I'd love to meet Emma properly and spend more time with Sophie." Joshua's heart did something complicated. This felt like more than charity work. But maybe he was reading too much into it. Maybe she was just being nice. He couldn't afford to hope for more. Yeah, that'd be great, if you want to." They met at a family-friendly pizza place on Saturday night. Emma took one look at Olivia and reached out her little arms without hesitation. Olivia scooped her up without hesitation, natural and easy, and Emma settled against her shoulder like she belonged there. Something in Joshua's chest cracked open, watching this stranger hold his daughter like she cared, like Emma mattered. Over pizza, Sophie talked non-stop. She told Olivia about her teacher, about her friends, about the book she was reading, about how she wanted to be an architect like her daddy. Olivia listened like everything a 6-year-old said was genuinely fascinating. She asked questions, laughed at Sophie's jokes, really laughed, not the polite laugh of an adult tolerating a child, made silly faces that sent Emma into giggles of pure delight. "You're really good with kids," Joshua observed. Olivia's smile flickered. "I've always loved kids. Just never had the chance to have my own." There was a story there, Joshua could tell, deep pain under the surface. But he didn't push. She'd tell him when she was ready. After dinner, walking to the parking lot, Sophie grabbed both their hands and swung between them like they were a family going out on a regular Saturday night. "This feels like a family," she announced. "Like a real family." Joshua winced, wanting to explain that this wasn't... They couldn't just... "It's okay," Olivia said softly. She looked at Joshua over Sophie's head. "It does feel nice, doesn't it?" Her green eyes held his. Joshua forgot to breathe for a moment. "Yeah," he managed. "It does." Over the next month, Olivia became a fixture in their lives. She came to dinner twice a week, brought groceries. I had extra from the non-profit bulk orders. Took Sophie to the park and pushed her on the swings while Sophie chattered about school. Babysat Emma when Joshua worked late, and Emma always went to sleep easy for her. She fit into their lives like she'd always been there. Joshua tried not to read too much into it. She was helping them, that was all. She probably helped lots of families. It was her job. But the way she looked at him sometimes, soft and wondering, made him think maybe it was more. One evening after the girls were in bed, Olivia lingered in the kitchen doorway. "I should go," she said, not moving. "You could stay," Joshua heard himself say. I mean for coffee, or tea, or just talking. I'd like that. They sat on the couch, careful distance between them, talking about everything and nothing. Joshua learned she'd grown up in Ohio, moved to Chicago for college, never left because something about the city spoke to her. She was 29, ran her non-profit full-time, loved old movies and Thai food and architecture. That's why I thought of Derek, she explained. I love sustainable design, the idea that buildings can heal instead of harm, that architecture can be used to help people, not just impress other architects. Not many people think about architecture that way. You do. I can tell from how you talk about your projects. You design for people, not for recognition. Joshua looked at her, really looked. She was so beautiful. But more than that, she was kind. She saw him, not the homeless man she'd rescued, not the grieving widower or the failure, but him, Joshua the architect, Joshua the father, Joshua the man. Olivia, he said carefully, why are you really here? I mean, you've done so much for us, but it feels like maybe it's not just about the non-profit. She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. Can I tell you something? Something I don't usually tell people? Of course. I'm lonely. The words came out soft, almost ashamed. I have work, I have acquaintances, I have non-profit staff who respect me, but I don't have this, real connection, family, love. I grew up in a house where my parents loved each other more than they loved us kids. My siblings resent me for the money. They think I should just hand it all to them. I don't have real friendships because everyone wants something. She took a breath. I told myself I was helping you for the non-profit, but the truth is, you and Sophie and Emma, you've helped me too. You let me feel like I belong somewhere, like I'm not just the rich girl writing checks, like I'm just Olivia, someone people care about for who I am. Joshua's throat tightened. You do belong here. Olivia looked up, eyes shining. Yeah? Yeah. Sophie loves you. Emma light up when you walk in the door. And I... He stopped, not sure he was ready to say it. And you? Olivia whispered. And I'm falling in love with you. He didn't know who moved first, maybe both of them. But suddenly they were kissing, and it was terrifying and wonderful, and felt like coming home in a way he hadn't felt since before Rebecca died. It was different, not a replacement, but a new beginning, a second chance at happiness he didn't know was possible. They broke apart, breathless. Is this okay? Olivia whispered. I don't want to complicate things. If this is more than okay, Joshua said. This is perfect. They took it slow, dates when Maria could watch the girls, stolen moments between work and bedtime routines. Joshua hadn't dated since Rebecca died, didn't know if he remembered how, but with Olivia it felt natural, easy, like they were exactly what the other person needed. 2 weeks after their first kiss, Joshua took Olivia to dinner alone. It was a nice restaurant, not fancy, but better than their usual pizza places. I want to tell you about Rebecca, Joshua said over wine. I want you to know about her, because she was important. She gave me Sophie. She made me a better person. Olivia listened as he talked about his wife, about her laugh and her creativity, and how she'd wanted to be an architect too before she discovered design, about Sophie's birth and the joy on Rebecca's face, about watching her die and the devastation that came after. I'm not saying this to compare, Joshua said carefully. I'm saying it because I want you to know that loving someone new doesn't erase loving her. I can honor what Rebecca and I had and still fall in love with you. Olivia reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That's one of the kindest things anyone's ever said to me. Over the next month, they went on proper dates. Joshua saved his money from his new job and took Olivia to dinner while Maria watched the girls. They went to the Art Institute one Saturday afternoon while Sophie was at a birthday party and Emma was with babysitter Maria. They walked along Navy Pier as the sun set, and Joshua told her about his dreams. Not his old dreams of becoming a senior partner, but his new dreams of designing affordable housing, of creating communities that worked. "I want to design the future," he told her. "Not just buildings, but places where families like mine can be safe, where people have dignity." "You will," Olivia said. "I'll help you." "I don't want your money," Joshua said carefully. "I want your support, your belief in me. That's what I actually need." "You have that," Olivia promised. "You always will." 3 months into their relationship, Olivia sat across from him at dinner at their apartment. She'd cooked, and the food was genuinely terrible, which somehow made it perfect. And she looked nervous in a way he'd never seen before. "I need to tell you something," she said, setting down her fork. Joshua's stomach dropped. Here it came. The catch. The revelation that would ruin everything. "Okay," he said carefully, bracing himself. "The non-profit, it's not exactly... I mean, it is real. The work is real. The programs are real. People are genuinely helped. But I'm not exactly working for it. She took a breath. "I created it. I fund it entirely." Joshua frowned. "I don't understand." "I'm not just someone who works for a non-profit," Olivia said quietly. I have money, Joshua. A lot of money." "How much is a lot?" Olivia seemed to shrink into herself. $400 million. The silence was deafening. Joshua stared at her, sure he'd misheard. The apartment felt like it was tilting. $400 million? "I sold a tech company when I was 25, Olivia said miserably. "It was a lucky timing, right product, right time. The company exploded. They bought me out. I've been trying to give it away meaningfully ever since. The non-profit, the housing programs, it's all mine. I fund it all, from my personal wealth." Joshua stood up, the chair scraping harsh against the floor. "You're telling me you're a millionaire. Technically, multi-billionaire on net worth. And you didn't think to mention this? In 3 months? While I've been sitting here worrying about my job and my rent and whether I can afford new shoes for Sophie?" "I wanted to, but every time I tried—" "You tried?" Joshua's voice rose. "When? When exactly did you try to tell me that you're rich enough to own this entire building?" "That's not fair," Olivia said, standing too. "Fair?" Joshua laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about fair? I poured my heart out to you, told you things I've never told anyone, fell in love with you, and you were just, what? Playing charity with the poor homeless guy, testing yourself, seeing what it's like to help the less fortunate? That's not fair." "Of course it's not fair. None of this is fair." Joshua's composure shattered. "Do you think this is funny? Do you think I'm funny? The desperate architect who fell for his savior, who thought his luck had actually changed. Joshua, please. The apartment, the job, all of it. This was just you playing charity with the poor homeless guy." He gestured at her simple jeans and sweater. "This is a costume, isn't it? You're playing poor while you have $400 million. Do you think that's fun?" "I wasn't playing." "No, this—" He gestured broadly. "This is a costume. You're playing poor while you have $400 million in the bank. You're slumming with a homeless man and his kids like we're some kind of charity project." "That's not what this is," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "That's not what you are." "Then what am I? What are we?" Joshua sat back down, his anger turning to pain. "I trusted you. I believed that maybe, somehow, my life was actually turning around, that there was someone out there who saw me as more than my circumstances. And the whole time, you were just... What? Proving to yourself that you're a good person by helping the poor family. No, Olivia whispered. How long were you going to keep lying? Joshua's voice was hollow now. How long until you got bored? Until you decided we were no longer your charity project? I love you, Olivia said desperately. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I love you, not the money, not the non-profit, not helping families. You, I love you. You love the idea of me, Joshua said bitterly. The tragic widower with 2 kids, the noble poor man rebuilding his life. That's what you love. The story, the narrative. I'm a character in your redemption arc. That's not true. Isn't it? Joshua looked at her. You saw a homeless man at a bus stop and decided to fix him, to rescue him. That's what this was, not love. Rescue. I need you to leave, Joshua heard himself say. His voice sounded far away. Olivia's face crumpled. Can we just talk? Leave, please. She left. The door closed softly behind her. Joshua stood in his small apartment, the apartment she'd given him, and wanted to punch something. Instead, he sat on the floor and cried. Sophie appeared in her doorway, eyes wide. Why was Miss Olivia crying? Joshua's anger deflated like a balloon. He sat on the couch, head in his hands. We had a fight, sweetheart. Are you going to make up? I don't know. Sophie climbed into his lap, small arms around his neck. I love Miss Olivia, don't you? Did he? Could you love someone who'd lied, who'd hidden something so fundamental? Joshua held his daughter and didn't answer. It's complicated, Soph. Adults always say that when they're being silly. Despite everything, Joshua almost smiled. Over the next week, Olivia tried to reach him. Texts, calls. A letter slipped under his door. Joshua ignored them all. He went to work, came home, took care of his daughters, and tried to convince himself he was fine. He wasn't fine. He missed her, desperately. The girls asked about her constantly. Sophie would look out the window hoping to see her car. Even Emma would look at the door when someone knocked, face falling when it wasn't Olivia. And Joshua was miserable. His new job felt hollow. The apartment felt empty. Everything tasted like ash. On Friday night, Maria knocked. She held an envelope. This came for you. From Olivia, Maria said firmly. And before you throw it away, I'm going to tell you something. Olivia came to see me. She was devastated. Devastated, Joshua. She told me everything. The money, why she didn't tell you, how much she cares about you. Joshua almost refused the letter, but Maria gave him a look that said, "Don't be an idiot." So he took it. Inside was a letter in Olivia's neat handwriting. Joshua, I don't blame you for being angry. I should have told you earlier. But I need you to understand why I didn't. When I sold my company, everything changed. Overnight, I went from normal 25-year-old to someone everyone wanted something from. Friends I'd known for years suddenly had business ideas they needed funding for. Men I dated cared more about my portfolio than my personality. My own family started treating me like an ATM. My brothers asked me for loans within a week. My sister wanted me to pay for her wedding, her house, her car. I learned to hide my wealth, to dress down, live simply, ride the bus instead of taking cars. I created the non-profit because I wanted to help people, but I wanted to do it as myself, not as the rich girl playing savior. When Sophie approached me at that bus stop, I saw real need. Not someone who wanted my money, but someone who needed help. A child being brave enough to ask. And when I got to know you, I fell for you. Not the architect or the single dad or any role, just you. The man who reads bedtime stories in funny voices, who remembers how I take my coffee, who looks at me like I'm the most interesting person in the room. I was afraid if you knew about the money, that would end. You'd see the bank account instead of me. You'd think I was trying to buy you. or you'd think I was lying about everything, including how I feel. I know I hurt you by not telling you. I understand if you can't forgive that. But please know that everything I feel for you is real. The money is just money. You are everything. I love you, Joshua. I'm in love with you. And I'll wait as long as it takes for you to decide if you can love me back. Yours, Olivia. Joshua read the letter 3 times. Then he sat on the couch and read it again. He pulled up his laptop and did something he hadn't done in years. He searched for information about Olivia Collins. There she was. Forbes 30 under 30. Tech entrepreneur, philanthropist, privacy advocate. Photos of her at charity galas in elegant dresses, standing with CEOs and politicians. Articles about her company, her wealth, her privacy. One article was titled, "Why Tech's Most Secretive Billionaire Refuses to Use Social Media," and in every photo she looked uncomfortable, like she was playing a part, like she didn't belong in those spaces. Then he found an article from 2 months ago. Reclusive tech mogul spotted riding CTA bus. Is this a publicity stunt? The photo showed Olivia in jeans and a sweater, backpack over her shoulder, getting on a bus. She looked like herself, like the woman he knew. Joshua understood, suddenly. She wasn't pretending when she was with him. She was pretending in those gala photos. The real Olivia, the one who cared about sustainable architecture and non-profit work and helping families. That was her. The $1 billion bank account was real, but it didn't make her less real. He grabbed his keys. Olivia's penthouse was in a luxury building overlooking Lake Michigan. The doorman tried to stop him, but Joshua said firmly, "Tell her Joshua Morgan is here. She'll want to see me." 5 minutes later, he was being escorted to the top floor. The elevator opened directly into her penthouse. Olivia opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, eyes red like she'd been crying. She looked beautiful and miserable. "Joshua, I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I was angry and hurt and I didn't listen. But I read your letter and I understand. Or I'm trying to." Olivia's lip trembled. "I should have told you sooner." "Yeah, probably. But I get why you didn't." He stepped closer. "You wanted someone to love you for you, not your money, not your status, just you. I wanted you to love me for me." "I do." Joshua cupped her face. "I fell in love with the woman who held my daughter at the bus stop, who makes silly faces to make Emma laugh, who listens to my architecture rants like they're the most fascinating thing she's ever heard, who gave us a home when we had nowhere else to go. That's who I love. The money is just money. Terrifying amounts of money, yes. Weird and surreal and kind of terrifying. But just money. Just $400 million of money." "Okay, that's kind of terrifying," Joshua admitted. "But I don't care about it. I care about you. I want you. Just you." Olivia kissed him, hard and desperate and full of relief. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I'm so in love with you. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I wasn't honest. I love you too, even if you are ridiculously rich, and I'm still figuring out how to make rent," Joshua said. "We'll figure this out. Together." Olivia pulled back, eyes serious. "About that, I want to be clear. I don't expect you to need me financially. You're doing great at Derek's firm. You're building your life back. I'm not trying to rescue you or buy you or—" "I know." Joshua kissed her forehead. "But maybe sometimes you can buy dinner, since you're loaded and all." She laughed, and God, he'd missed that sound so much. "Can we start over?" Olivia asked. "No more secrets?" "No more secrets," Joshua agreed. "Full honesty, even the scary stuff." "Okay, honest truth. I want to be in your life, yours and Sophie's and Emma's. Not as a benefactor or a helper, but as—" "My girlfriend," Joshua supplied. Olivia smiled. I was going to say partner, but girlfriend works too. Eventually, maybe, more than girlfriend, if you want that. I want that, Joshua said. I want everything with you. They told Sophie and Emma that evening. Sophie squealed and did her spinning dance, the same one she'd done the day they moved into the apartment. Emma clapped her little hands and said, "Livy! Livy!" Emma's attempt at Olivia's name, and for the first time since Rebecca died, Joshua felt like they might actually be okay. That broken pieces could actually come back together into something beautiful. Over the next year, they built something real. Olivia met Joshua's family, his sister, who was skeptical at first, but warmed up when she saw how Olivia looked at Joshua, his father who just wanted his son happy. Joshua met Olivia's parents, who were surprisingly normal people who seemed both proud of and somewhat overwhelmed by their daughter's success. "We don't really understand what she does," Olivia's mother had told Joshua over coffee, "but we love her, and I can see that you do too. That's what matters." They navigated the weirdness of her wealth. Joshua still insisted on paying for dates with his income from Derek's firm, Olivia learning to let him even though she could buy the restaurant. They had conversations about money, about fairness, about what kind of future they wanted to build together. "I don't want Sophie and Emma to grow up thinking money solves everything," Joshua said one evening. "I also don't want to pretend we don't have it. How do we balance that?" "We teach them about gratitude," Olivia said thoughtfully. "We volunteer. We work with the non-profit. We show them that having resources means responsibility. We raise them to see money as a tool, not an identity." Olivia started spending nights at their apartment, then weekends. Then it seemed silly for her to have a separate place at all. "Move in with us," Joshua said one morning, watching her make breakfast in his kitchen like she belonged there. She was making French toast for Sophie and Emma, and his daughters were laughing at her attempts at funny voices while she cooked. "Your apartment is 800 square feet, Olivia pointed out, "so we'll get a bigger place. Together. Equal names on the lease, equal partners in everything." Olivia turned, eyes bright. "You mean that?" "I mean it. I want to wake up with you every morning. I want Sophie and Emma to have you around all the time. I want to build a life with you, a real life, not because of the money or what you can do for us, but because I love you and I want to spend forever with you. That sounds like I'm not proposing, not yet, but I'm saying I want to, soon, when I can do it right." Olivia kissed him, tasting like coffee and happiness. "I want that too, more than anything." They found a house in a good school district, a place with a yard where Sophie could run and Emma could play. Olivia wanted to buy it outright, but Joshua insisted on getting a mortgage too. "Equal partners," he said firmly, "in everything. I won't be a kept man in my own home." "You're not a kept man. You're a person I love. Those aren't mutually exclusive." "I know, but I need to contribute. I need to know I'm building this with you, not just living off your money." They compromised. Joshua got a mortgage for his portion based on his income. Olivia put the rest down, and they both had their names on the deed. Equals. Partners. 6 months later, Joshua proposed in that house's backyard. Sophie and Emma helped, holding signs that said, "Will you marry our dad?" Olivia said yes before he even got the ring out, and Emma tried to eat the signs, and Sophie did her spinning dance. They married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Sophie was flower girl and walked down the aisle like she owned the place, completely at ease. Emma was ring bearer and tried to eat the rings, which everyone found hilarious. Olivia's parents came, Joshua's family came, Derek from his firm came. Olivia wore a simple white dress and looked like every dream Joshua hadn't known he still had. When he saw her walking toward him, he cried. Actually cried. Happy tears. "I love you," he whispered during their first dance as husband and wife. "I love you too," Olivia whispered back. "My home, my family, my everything." Sophie watched from the side of the dance floor, beaming. She'd been right that day at the bus stop. She'd needed a home and a mommy. Joshua had needed both too, even if he didn't know it. And Olivia had needed them right back, a family that loved her for her, not for her money, a place where she belonged. 2 years later, they added twin boys, Jacob and Luke, to the family. Then another daughter, Grace, was born 2 years after that. Their house filled with noise and chaos and love. The kind of love that Joshua had thought was impossible after Rebecca died. Olivia used her wealth to expand the non-profit, helping hundreds of families the way she'd helped Joshua and Sophie and Emma. She hired Joshua to design affordable housing, beautiful, sustainable, dignified spaces for people in transition. Buildings that said to people struggling, "You deserve beauty, you deserve safety, you deserve a home." Joshua's career rebuilt, better than before. He became a partner at Derek's firm after 5 years of dedication and innovation. Won awards for his work in sustainable community design. But the success he was proudest of was the family photos on his desk. All 5 kids, his wife, his second chance at life. On the 5th anniversary of that bus stop meeting, Joshua took his family back to that exact spot. "This is where Mommy Olivia found us," he told the younger kids, who didn't remember. "Actually," Sophie corrected, now 11 years old and pedantic like her mother, "this is where I found her. I told you that you needed each other." Joshua pulled his precocious daughter into a hug. "You were right, kiddo. You were so right." Olivia slipped her hand into his, their wedding rings catching the afternoon light. Around them, their children played. Emma was 12 now and helping Jacob with his shoelaces. Lucy was helping Luke up from the playground. Grace was running around yelling about architecture. Their family, built from broken pieces and impossible hope. "Thank you," Joshua said quietly. "For what?" "For stopping that day, for listening to a 6-year-old with a gap-toothed smile and no social filter. For seeing us, for believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself." Olivia laughed. "Best decision I ever made. Best day of my life." She kissed him while their children groaned dramatically about parents being gross. And Joshua thought about that terrible, desperate day when he had nothing left but his daughters and his pride, when Sophie had shattered that pride with 5 impossible words. "You need a home, and I need a mommy." They'd both found so much more than that. They'd found each other. They'd found family. They'd found a second chance. And that made all the difference. Sophie, now 11 years old, looked back at that day sometimes and understood what had happened. She'd been scared, living in the car, watching her daddy struggle. She'd been brave without really knowing what bravery was, and her bravery had changed everything. Years later, when Sophie was older, Olivia would tell her the truth. "You saved us, Sophie. You knew exactly what to say to save our family." And Sophie would smile, understanding finally what her 6-year-old self had known instinctively, that asking for help wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing anyone could do. The families Olivia's non-profit helped numbered in the hundreds. Single mothers who got second chances, fathers like Joshua who rebuilt their lives, children who got homes and hope and futures they'd thought impossible. Because one woman listened to a child at a bus stop. Because Joshua let himself trust again. Because love, in all its forms, kept showing up. That was the real miracle. Not luck, not money, but connection, community, the human capacity to see each other in our darkest moments and say, "I'm here. Let me help. Let me be part of your story." Joshua and Olivia built that together, And in doing so, they showed their children, all 5 of them, what it meant to love completely, honestly, and without reservation. That was their real legacy.